In my college years, I worked as a babysitter to earn extra cash, without the need for a fixed work schedule. My main responsibility was to look after a 4-year-old boy from a family who frequently had dinner events for work. The boy was quiet, which made my job easier. He spent most of his time watching TV and playing with toys, and he seemed to enjoy my company. On my 6th time babysitting, the parents informed me that they would be back home around 11 p.m. and that I needed to make sure their son was in bed by 9 p.m. Everything went smoothly until the boy went to the bathroom and returned asking about shuffling noises coming from the basement. I immediately turned off the TV, and we both heard faint movements from downstairs. I reassured him that it was probably a small animal and asked him to stay upstairs while I checked the basement. I was cautious as I had never been to the basement before. It was an unfinished space filled with storage boxes. I walked around, checking behind boxes, but I didn't find anything unusual. I went back upstairs and gave the boy a big hug to comfort him. Hours passed, and it was time for the boy to go to bed. As he was getting ready, I heard shuffling again, but this time it was louder. I told the boy to stay put and went to investigate. When I opened the basement door, I saw a half-naked man searching through a storage box. I quickly shut the door and ran upstairs to get the boy. I called 911 and waited outside the house with the boy while the police arrived. They searched the house and found evidence of someone living in the basement. The parents arrived, and I informed them about what had happened. We lost touch after a few weeks, and I no longer wanted to babysit. It was a terrifying experience, and I still worry that the man could be living in someone else's basement. Story number 2. My closest friend had a 7-year-old daughter named Sarah. Occasionally, I would look after her when her mother needed me to. They lived in a beautiful home in Washington, surrounded by trees and mountains. Their nearest neighbors were several miles away, which made it a peaceful and quiet place. One day, my friend asked me if I could take care of Sarah for 2 days while she went on a business trip. I agreed, and a few weeks later, I went to their house. After having lunch with my friend, she finished packing and left for the airport. I spent the afternoon with Sarah, listening to her talk about school and her friends. Then we went out to get some dinner and dessert. When we got back to the house, we decided to watch a movie before going to bed. While scrolling through the movie list, Sarah suddenly asked me who was at the front door. I turned to look, and to my surprise, there was a tall man standing on the porch. When I opened the door, he said he was just making sure someone was home, and then left. Although it was strange, I assumed he was a neighbor and didn't think much of it. We watched the movie, and I put Sarah to bed. Later that night, I heard a crunching sound from the back of the house. I went to check but found nothing there. I felt a little uneasy, being in a house surrounded by a forest in the dark, but I managed to fall asleep on the couch. Hours later, I woke up and turned off the TV. The house was silent, and I felt uneasy again. I heard footsteps coming from the right side of the house, which was close to the room I was in. I walked over to the window and pulled back the curtain, but there was nothing there. The next morning, Sarah told me she heard someone walking around outside for almost an hour after she had gone to bed. I went outside to check but found no evidence of anyone being there. Later, while walking in front of the house, I saw the same man who had knocked on the door the night before, walking down the street. To be safe, I took Sarah to the mall for the day. I didn't want to stay in the house anymore. Story number 3. At the age of 13, my mother would work late every Saturday, and I would have a babysitter come over once a week. I thought I was too old for a babysitter and didn't enjoy having someone watching over me. The main person my mom had over was Thomas, a 20-year-old son of one of her work friends. However, I did not like him. He acted awkward and strange around me, although he acted extra nice and talkative when interacting with my mother. I talked to my mother about it, but she thought I just wanted to be alone. One Saturday night, Thomas arrived late, as usual, and my mom talked with him for a while before leaving for work. I turned on my Xbox and sat on the couch while Thomas hung out in the kitchen, After a few minutes, I heard him talking quietly to someone in the kitchen, but I couldn't make out what he was saying. He then came into the living room and told me someone was going to come over for a second and not to worry. I didn't know how to respond and found the situation weird, but there was nothing I could do. The next 20 minutes were awkward as he sat on the couch next to me, not saying anything or taking out his phone. Our living room was by the front door, so I guessed he was waiting for someone to arrive. After some time, a man came knocking at the door, and Thomas rushed to the door, stood in front of it for a moment before telling me he would be back in just a minute, and then he went outside to talk to the man. Their shadows were visible through the blinds, and I could tell that the man handed Thomas a large bag and then left. A few seconds later, I heard the garbage can lid slam, and Thomas came back inside through the front door. The rest of the night became stranger as Thomas had several phone calls with someone in the kitchen, and at one point, I heard him raising his voice in the far loft area. After a while, the same car from earlier arrived, and Thomas and the man argued for some time before the man left with the bag. Thomas returned inside, looking frustrated, and went to the kitchen before telling me to go to bed at 10. I stayed up for a few hours, and when my mother came back, I told her everything. That's all for today. Hope you enjoyed the video. Never forget to like, comment, and share the video. And remember to subscribe to the channel.